Okay, we've called the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. We'll do a little roll call to be official. Amy Monahan,
Bill Rowinski.
Carl Cecil.
Jean Pillow, Wendy Costa, Kate McDonald.
yay, and John Guskowski. Next up, approval of minutes from September 4th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Seconded by Jean. Any corrections where I messed up, things that need to be changed?
I didn't notice anything.
All right, no corrections being heard, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous, thank you. Next up is the very exciting introduction draft review. So you all got the introduction draft from John.
And we distributed this beforehand, right? Everyone's seen this before?
Yes, got it, yep.
So, this is obviously there's not a ton of substance to it. There's not a lot of plan in it. It's a little bit more straightforward, objective. This is what a plan is. This is what the state requires. This is the consistency with the regional plan. This is the consistency with the non-existent regional plan. The consistency with the state plan, and then a little bit of how we got here in Woodstock. Some of the little brief intro of what happened in 2015, and then back in 2002, I believe, was the one prior to that. So it's so really, I'm happy to take specific questions, specific critiques, notes about things we want to beef up. But broadly, I would just like a little bit of feedback on, is this essentially the right length and tone, or are you relatively comfortable with this? Because this is how I'm sort of writing and editing stuff. So if we're off on a bad foot, I want to know that now. But that's sort of, there's not hopefully a lot controversial in here. I just wanted to say,
Hey, John,
this is where we're starting. Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, having looked at the 100 or 5,000 pages, whatever the other one was, let's just say it was too many. This is about the right length. I like the general overview, but my question is, where do you address things like more 150-foot towers coming in? I mean, should that be addressed here, or is that addressed some other place?
This is that. So if you look at page 2 of your document here, which is basically the draft outline, I probably should have started there.
Okay.
So page 2 is the draft outline that we sort of discussed last time, and I think
Right.
Carl, you weren't here for that. So what we're looking at today is basically the first chapter on the left, which is introduction, and we cover sort of what is a POCD, statutory history, that sort of thing. When we're putting up 200 or 150-foot towers would probably be in develop, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, like the 5th section of the plan. And it'll probably just be like 3 words, like, more big towers, and we'll leave it at that.
Thanks, appreciate that. And I guess probably, okay, so I understand, this is just the intro, okay.
Right.
You had me fooled. I was thinking this whole document was like, great, I love it.
Oh yeah, no.
Sorry.
It's gonna be a little longer than this. Yeah, but this is just the first part.
But so the second part of my question is, I assume that also we'll talk about what buildings would look like, or is that incorporated here? So for instance, if you're to put 150 unit, nursing assisted living, how does that get addressed? Or is that going to be addressed, or is that something not addressed?
Yeah, I think all of the above, it can and should be addressed in one manner or another. I would say your 3, I don't know if there's 2 or 3 questions in there would probably all be within the develop chapter.
Right.
It's, you know, it's, and, you know, we'd had this conversation that, you know, some things we want to talk about preserving our natural resources, our history, our traditions, our farms. What do we want to develop? You know, some more housing and some, and infrastructure would be the place where we would talk about telecommunications and other things. And, you know, discussions of public sewer and water lines, discussions of, you know, high-speed data, discussions of, you know, other methods of communication, and obviously, you know, cell coverage is in there. And then we're also in develop, we're also going to be talking about housing. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit tonight. And that the housing discussion will include issues of what's, you know, do we want to have sort of differentiated areas of density in town where, you know, we're encouraging higher density, more activity in certain places, less activity, more preservation in other places. And then what types? And we had this discussion a little bit at planning and zoning, wherein, you know, we know that we don't have a lot of housing for empty nesters and downsizers and people who are looking to age in place here in Woodstock. And so, you know, other than Roxbury Village or whatever that's called. And so looking at our demographics, looking at our needs profile, that's going to be part of the housing discussion. So yeah, both of those, or all three of those components, will be discussed most likely in the housing and the development recommendations.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I am a little disappointed though.
It's going to be more than this.
Oh, doc. I was hoping. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
John, I very much liked the way it was written and the way it was structured. I thought it was super easy to read and follow.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I really like the consistency of the non-existent NECOG plan, and the, you know, the discussion about the consistency of the state plan as well. So I thought it was a really good intro. The one request I had in the bullet points on page 7.
Yes.
The last bullet point is chronologically out of order.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good point. Yeah, because Delia had a separate section for subdivision changes, and yeah,
it's down there because it's kind of a different topic.
Yep.
But
yeah,
do you mind?
I don't know. That's really tough.
I just upgraded to be able to cut and paste sections in my Word documents. So yeah, we should be able to do that.
While we're on that same page, sorry, Kate, you're done?
Yeah, I'm good.
I'd like to see in the second to the last line, date for the Great Recession.
Mm.
Talking 2008 or
that's a good idea.
2009, or just because there might be other recessions.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, so how would we date that? We call that like 2008 or 2008 to 2010 ish, or what?
I don't know. I'd have to do the research to.
Yeah.
2008 is definitely
yeah. That's sort of when the bubble really burst, was in 08. Yeah. Okay.
So if you
yeah. Good point.
Back up to page 6.
Mm-hmm.
About halfway down the first paragraph. I'm gonna present something that I don't know if you're aware of. It says the existing sewer and water service areas can also support a variety of additional housing units. And that is not possible.
Yeah, that's probably
It's possible, but not allowed, yes.
We could probably say could rather than can.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's an important enough distinction. Yeah.
Yeah, because if there's.
Right,
if you
because there's a
have-
little bit of a sewer avoidance policy.
A little bit.
Well, there's only 2 more connections to sewer that have actually gone through the approval. They haven't connected yet.
Yeah.
So.
But there are a number of parcels that are generally undeveloped that are in the sewer service area.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Well, procedurally, I don't know, Bill, you might know better than I do. But like, let's say, for instance, if Chapman wanted to develop his property on Butts, basically between Butts Road and 171, could he tap into the sewer line there? Or? Because
Physically it's possible, but they would say no.
Ron would be out there in front of the
but he's in the,
bulldozer.
he's in the sewer service district though, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Yes, but there's
But-
limited what they'll patch, so we'd have to go through Putnam and get some other type of arrangement also.
Sure,
Just
well,
for-
we need a letter of service essentially from Putnam to say that they'd take the additional flow. But
But
okay,
just
yeah,
for-
so that's was phrased a little bit too strongly, but yeah, let's say could.
But just for an example, a couple of years back, we had a couple lots at the inn that were subdivided, they wanted to build on there.
Yep.
And it was capable for them to hitch up to the sewer system, but it was not allowed because they had room on site for a regular septic system.
So could versus can is definitely key.
Okay, yeah, and I might actually throw in a little maybe a parenthetical about the town's sewer avoidance policy there. I don't know if that's the right place for it, but yeah, okay, that's a good point, Bill.
Along those lines too, I was thinking of, as I'm reading all these other reports, having a section on limitations. Limitations to certain types of, development. We don't really have like one sidewalk in town. We have to provide certain distances for wells and septic systems, and that really puts a lot of limitations on things. And that's up to the health department to control that. We don't have much control over that.
Mm-hmm.
May I add that in a drinking water watershed, you have to have a greater separating distance between streams and your leaching fields. So instead of 25 feet, it's a 50-foot separation. So
Okay.
that's enough issue that's.
So those limitations would be addressed in a development discussion though. You know what I mean? Like limitations
Well, I
can
just-
definitely be part of the limit.
Yeah.
Development.
But a lot of these documents talk about, businesses close together and walking distance and everything, and, the more I read it, the more I say that, all that stuff doesn't really apply to us, partially because of the way the town is spread out and the limitations we have with the wells and septics. And, I was just gonna say, plus the watershed issue, if you really put that, if some of your GIS person can look at that, I mean, we're talking probably 80% of the town, that's drinking water watershed, it's not for us.
Right, right. Okay, yeah, no, I think, I think we'll probably cover different elements of that. Certainly in our discussion of natural resources, the water supply watersheds are going to be very important. I'll probably also put in some of the discussion about the limitations of housing density, broadly speaking, because we're, again, in watershed protection areas and in lack of sewer and water infrastructure for most of the town. I'll probably include a mention of that in the next chapter, which will include our housing and economic profile.
Right. That's a good place for it, set it up front.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a good point. And Jean, I'm not sure I knew that explicitly about separating distances in the watershed. It's good to know.
I can send you, actually, it's in the appendix of the document that I sent you about drinking water watersheds.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
In there.
good.
I just had one simple little question. The message from the chairman.
Oh, that's the old one?
Oh, okay. I was like, who's I'm like, was that Dave? This made no sense to me. So are we putting in a message from the chair?
We can
Get it or
that was, I think this was Jeff Marcotte's statement.
okay. It didn't sound like I was confused as to who it was. I'm like,
Yeah, so I'll share this with, I mean, that's really kind of like the last thing we need to put in.
okay.
I'll share it with Dave Morse, and see if he wants to make any edits to it or what have you. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Unless you as chairman of the POCD committee want to convince him that the message should really come from you, Amy.
I don't care as long as the message is accurate and of the chairman of some sort.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
but yeah, this was from Jeff Markup.
Or maybe Dave and I could write a message together.
That'd be nice, sure. Yeah, well, I'll mention that to him at the meeting tonight.
Perfect.
For the record, the Great Recession was late 2007 through mid 2009. Google.
Thank you.
Is that AI or?
Okay. Cool. Okay, and yeah, again, most of this stuff is, is just pulling and organizing facts. So there's not that much broken ground here.
Do you want any images in here? Or are we going non-imagery? Just a kind of question.
I think we'll sprinkle images in. I think what we'll probably try to start doing is just assemble a library of pictures, and then when I turn this over to a layout person, we'll sprinkle them in. But if there are specific, like I did throw in, the locational guide map, obviously, and a picture of the O2 plan. But if you are going through here and saying, what would really pop is a picture of what, let me know that.
Okay.
And
That's what I was wondering. I didn't have any, but as I was reading,
Yeah.
you'll take those
yeah, no,
recommendations.
at some point we'll do that. And I have one of my team members has a drone and really loves doing drone photography. So we'll be able to do some nice, not as high and great as Leslie Sweetnam's stuff, but maybe a little bit lower, some, landscape level stuff.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm not worried about the pictures too much. Okay, so if there's nothing else on that, before we get into the housing discussion, what I'd propose would be, again, let's sort of hack our way through this. What I would propose for the next meeting would get you at the chapter that's, if you look at page 2, would be the Woodstock background, which is, again, largely an objective recitation of facts and stuff. So the brief history of Woodstock, and Carl, I'll try to keep it very brief. A little bit of our demographic profile, like what's our population, where's it going, what are the ages, what are the trends, and then a little bit about our housing and economic just status. So it's I'm not going to draw too many conclusions from there or make specific policy recommendations, other than some broad stuff like, hey, Woodstock is aging and our household populations are going down. So let's look at, maybe we need to look at services for seniors or more accessible housing, or, just broad stuff like that. But we're not going to recommend policy necessarily in this section. It's just, again, it's all introduction.
And you will send that out to us before the next meeting, like you did this first section?
Precisely.
Perfect. Excellent.
Yeah, so we're keeping a production schedule going. Okay, so that's what we've got so far. Thank you for your thoughts and edits. You want to talk about housing, Amy?
Yes.
So do we have results of the housing, the Committee on Aging survey that would be useful to kick off our discussion, or is that still pending?
So yeah, we do have results. Overwhelmingly, not surprising, and similar to the P&Z survey that was done some years ago, people want to remain in Woodstock as long as possible. But only 16% of seniors think that there's adequate housing for them. The survey itself did not go into specifics about what do you want to move into. It did ask about wanting a smaller home, wanting less maintenance chores, wanting less major, I need new windows or whatever, first floor living. Our community conversation that we're having on housing is October 22nd. And that's where we're going to try and glean from the audience. What do you want? Would you prefer condo type? Would you prefer rental? Would you prefer an over 55 community type? Not that we can necessarily have any of these things, but are you really looking for a 1,200 square foot, 1-story home on a half acre of land that you don't have to take care of on a street by yourself with a little green. You know, what are the things that you would really want and what does it mean to be able to live independently? So we have the results, but we don't have specifics around, well, what do you really want? We just
Okay.
know they can't afford to stay where they are anymore, and there is no housing stock available to, that's affordable, and I mean that in terms of they cannot afford it. And so, you know, there's so many of them that are already cost burdened by their houses. So that's where that stands.
Okay. Do you happen to know how many units are currently available at Roxbury Village?
24.
24.
Well, there's none
And
empty now.
Right, no,
24.
right. And I assume there's a waiting list a mile long.
Yes, there is.
Mhm.
Yep.
So the question I would have is what's around in the immediate community, i.e. Putnam, probably nothing in Pomfret, probably nothing in Eastford. Someone is a Union or whatever, it's Sturbridge. I gotta believe that there are, you know, how, for sure Putnam, you know, I mean, no, you're not in Woodstock, the town, but I mean, you're a stone's throw. If you're moving from a house and you're moving, you know, 5 miles.
Yep.
To Putnam versus, or even within Woodstock, if that were the case.
So the Putnam Housing Authority controls our housing.
Right.
It's a branch of it, right? So our 24 units in Woodstock are down nestled across from the cornfield
And
and
they
like
are
this.
not for Woodstock people.
Right, it's part of housing.
It's part of Putnam Housing Authority. You put your name on a waiting list.
Right.
And you could, there could be an
So
opening.
you'd be eligible for some of the Putnam units also, presumably.
Correct. But the
Yeah.
point that I'm getting at is, you're saying it's just down the road, right? But when you grow up in Woodstock and you wanna stay in Woodstock and you look at those 24 units in Woodstock, the alternative units are rows of brick housing with, you know, hundreds of low income stacked on top of each other, so it's not even comparable.
Right, but that's also talking about true affordable housing, government
Right.
subsidized, income limit, income based. There's also an issue of, there might be people who don't qualify for
lot.
that, but they can't afford $400,000 and $500,000 and $600,000 houses.
Are
They
there-
just want something smaller.
Yeah, the question is though, in Putnam, are there any assisted living facilities per se?
There's nursing
Um,
homes.
There's Matchelitis, I think might be it.
It's more of a nursing home, isn't it, than assisted
Yeah.
living?
Well,
Yeah.
there's differences, I mean.
There is differences, and I don't view I don't even view assisted living as. It's a place for people to live when they can't live by themselves anymore. Whether or not that can and or should be in Woodstock, I don't know the answer to that. That, to me, we need to solve the piece that's in between that. The people who are living in these big, cold, drafty, 2 and 3 2-story farmhouses, but they don't need assisted living. They just want a smaller piece of property where they can be independent and live independently. What does that look like?
So did you see the graphic of like middle housing that I sent
Yes,
out in the email?
yes.
So if you look at that graphic and you look at Woodstock, there's a lot of it that we don't actively have. I went to a housing presentation last weekend, and an interesting point that was brought up was you want to achieve a flow of housing, right? So you
Mhm.
want people to flow as their life changes, and they want to be able to have the housing to meet those needs. And in Woodstock, we do not have a flow of housing, not even close.
And I think if you jump to assisted living, and whether that happens or not, first of all, if you build 120 unit assisted living facility in Woodstock, it's not gonna be filled with 120 Woodstock residents, because it's just not going to
There's a
happen.
need, yeah, there's.
But you've missed that whole piece in between of
Mhm.
people who wanna either live in an accessory dwelling unit or just a smaller ranch, or that sort of thing.
And I think the culture of people too is moving towards like community housing for all ages, not just seniors. Like one of the things they discussed last weekend was like New London. And I know it's not comparable to Woodstock, but they just opened this whole facility for youth, which is 18 to 24. And they're, you know, like one room studio type of things, and there's 12 of them, but to live there, you have to work in the coffee house certain hours, you have to donate your time with seniors in the community certain hours, like it's actually a community building thing, and for that age group, it's just as much the seniors, that's such a lesson and an available thing. You have this affordable place where you can live on your own, and they're teaching you the skills to like be an effective person in society. So I don't think it's just seniors. I think that the community and the way that our education system is and the way society is, like group housing or community housing is more desirable now than it ever was, no matter where you are.
Well, it's
Young-
becoming,
Young
yeah.
people starting off in their career cannot
Right.
afford a
They
house in
can't.
Woodstock.
they can't afford
Right.
houses.
But when I lived
But-
in Hamden, they put in, 1 and 2 bedroom, apartments, a massive number of them. And they said there was no children allowed, and they took them to court, and Hamden lost. And
Right.
so they could not discriminate against families. So I'm curious about that one in London, how did they get away with it?
I don't know, but I don't know the specifics, I'm just saying.
If it would probably have to be a 55 and older thing, because that is 55. I think aging, if you're going to positively discriminate against or for somebody, aging or the elderly or seniors is the only legal discrimination you can do. And so yeah, you're allowed to restrict people, and those are usually have some caveat that at least you can be a a sugar daddy or a sugar mama, and you can be a senior and be married to a young person, and that young person could live with you in one of these 55 plus. Someone needs to be over 55, and I guess the assumption is seniors aren't having little kids but yeah, that's a tricky one. Can I ask a question? Is anyone familiar with Winding River Village in Tolland on Route 190 on Route 74, Tolland Stage Road? So I'm going to put this on the screen. It's just a Google Street View. Let me know if you can see this.
Yeah.
Yep,
So this is Route 74. The Tolland State Police Barracks is up to the. We're looking to the east right now. And so there's this little Winding River Village. So this is a rural state highway road. And sort of set back is this sort of 2.5 story, basically retirement community. And I think it's age restricted. It might have some services, so there might be some assisted living or like sort of communal meal space, but just in terms of scale, you've got something that it's 2.5 story. It's probably in the range of 30 to 40,000 square feet. And it's you can this is a country road like you'd see anywhere in Woodstock, right? If you see something like that, what's your thought?
cool.
It's possible for me that I like to walk. We both like to walk. I wouldn't walk on 74 in that place.
Right.
'cause
No,
it's
certainly not. Yeah. So there might be, and I mean, there in something like this on here. So you got a different scale here with a little U of parking. There's an L. And so you can see how back here. So I think there are probably some walking trails that are associated with it. But yeah, it's certainly not in a walkable neighborhood,
So-
although where there's nowhere in Woodstock that would necessarily apply either,
Is this kind of like Creamery Brook Village or Creamery Brook?
Yeah,
Sealy-
I think that's probably the right thing. Although I think Creamery Brook and Sealy Brown in Pomfret is a housing authority also. I think this is more or less private. There's really no housing authority involved. But it's
So I think the
just in,
question that you're asking is
Yeah.
if we had that type of development that was off the road, that type of view, it didn't impact, like, what is the impact level and would that be acceptable in
Yeah.
Woodstock? There was.
Is this something that you guys or could see your neighbors like raising serious issues with? Like, oh my God, this can't happen in Woodstock. Like, is this, so I'm trying to gauge scale, right, of project.
I mean,
Anything you offer. in
I was gonna
Woodstock,
say, somebody's
gonna
gonna complain about,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Barbecue.
to me, this seems like something that would be
Suitable?
suitable and utilized.
Do you know
Mhm.
how many units it is, John?
No, I could look that up pretty quickly, I think. I don't. So I'm gonna
Well,
stop
I
that
know
right
that, like, you know, at Creamery Brook, I know there's like a community room that people can like, who don't even live there can, you know, sign out, and there's activities that happen, and, you know, we don't have a senior center in Woodstock either, and so I think having something like that could help in multiple
Yeah.
aspects, not just the housing component, right, but also those sort of
But
social
it would also
environmental
have to
components.
be-
So that's, yeah, that's it's 31 units, just so you know, and it's all senior.
So that's, seems like it'd be more appropriate for that interim age that Wendy was talking about.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
would you look at some of these other housing suggestions as far as walkability to stores and things of that, that doesn't meet any of
But
that
this
stuff?
doesn't necessarily mean that everything in here is applicable to Woodstock, this is for.
I know, but I'm
No,
just.
yeah.
Are those
That's
rents
one
or
of
are
those
they
limitations.
more like
Yeah.
condos?
No, those are rentals. Those are, yeah, they're rentals, and they're managed by a nonprofit. So, you know, I think they probably get some subsidy, I would assume. So there's probably some affordability component to it. But yeah, I don't know the details. I was really just kind of wanting to get a sense of your opinions of the scale and sort of design approach.
You just struggle with size because of 30,000 to 40,000 square feet. I gotta think about what that
Right.
equates to around, I mean.
Well, just from the pictures that you saw, right, so coming
Right.
off the road, you see it a little bit, but it wasn't
Yeah.
obnoxious. When you look down, there were trees that seemed to be
Right,
buffering it from other things.
And there's some, you know, it's architecturally
Yes.
benign.
I mean, I think
It's, you know,
if
it's,
Chase wasn't there and you put it where Chase was, I think
Yeah,
that would be.
yeah.
And that's the thing, it could only happen on a suitable parcel. We're not saying
Right.
that this
Right.
will happen because it has to be the parcel, it has to be available.
Right.
But if the chance comes down the road, is this something that we would welcome? And
Yes.
what, because right now it's not allowed, there's no discussion, so.
Right.
That's the thing, like, if the opportunity came up on the right piece of land, is this something that is beneficial to our town?
I would say yes.
Well, then you also have the other challenges of water and sewer. I mean,
sure.
that's a big challenge from what I'm.
And that's the right parcel of land, because it has to be gravel, because it has to
Mhm.
support, so it really does, the limitations, like you're
Right.
saying,
Yeah.
they all go into everything, but.
Right. Yeah, and there's no, in that part of Tallinn, there's no sewer lines either, so it's, you know, Right.
Well, should be-
I didn't hear what you said, John.
in that part of Tallinn, there's no sewer lines also, so that's operating on a private well, private septic system.
Wow.
So, and that's 31 units, so it's probably south of 50 bedrooms. You know, it's probably mostly ones and twos. And so I'm just thinking flows. It's probably less than 7,500 gallons a day, so it would fall under the Department of Public Health. So permitting isn't actually that bad as long as you've got decent soils.
Right.
But that's almost in an aquifer there. There's a brook or river in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they probably have some decent soils. Hopefully not too fast, so you're getting your nitrogen into the river. But yeah. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So that might have been a little digression. That was sort of on my mind when you were talking about. So you know, I don't know people who are not on planning and zoning. We had just we were in the middle of a public hearing, and so Amy, maybe you can't comment on this, but we're in the middle of a public hearing about a potential text change that would allow for a managed care facility. this may be why people are talking about 120 unit, managed care thing, because that was sort of the density that was proposed as part of this text amendment. I don't know. To me, it's a little bit less of a housing thing. I think, as some of you were saying, that's more of a care facility than it is a housing opportunity. But it also is something that does not currently exist in Woodstock.
Also an economic development.
Yes.
Sure. That's a big, something like that would be.
Suitable for our town. Yeah.
But I think,
I know that there's a shortage of nursing homes, a shortage of, new Roxbury Village type things. I don't know if there's a shortage of assisted living facilities just because that's private pay, so I don't know whether.
Think about it this way, how many people do you know that might benefit from a little extra support? And I think if you look at it that way, an assisted living
I'm not worried
facility.
about the benefit, I'm worried about the cost. If people are
Oh,
complaining they
yes.
can't afford the house they're in, they're
Oh,
not
sure.
going to assisted living. And I don't think people understand assisted living
Right,
generally personal pay,
yeah,
Mhm.
yes,
and it's expensive.
right,
Mhm.
but it's still something worth discussing as it's complete, it's apples and
Yeah.
oranges.
And I think
Apples
that
and
was
oranges.
why somebody was asking, what's the minimum you need to be profitable? You can't have a 5-bedroom assisted or 5-unit assisted
Yeah.
living facility. It's never gonna be profitable. And I know he took offense to the question, but there's gotta be some general cutoff that it's gotta be 50 units or whatever, or it's just not cost beneficial, because you have to bring in those assisted living services. So
And the people to do it.
Mhm.
Right, and so,
My mother-in-law
20
was in
sounds
a
like a lot.
assisted living she got kicked out because they got rid of, the level of support, but it was like $6,000 a month,
Mhm.
I was just in,
which is,
yeah, I was
that's a
just
pretty
in,
hefty price.
yeah, I was just in the Board of Selectmen meeting and there was a couple there and both their parents are in. One pays $16,000 a month and the other
Yeah.
pays $8,000 a month.
That's-
Oh my
So this
gosh.
was Clarksville, Tennessee, so this is not exactly, it's not exactly New York City or Hartford, or, this is Clarksville, Tennessee, and it was that
Yeah.
much.
It would be very expensive.
So
Yeah.
if we were to go back to the missing middle housing,
Mhm.
let's just poll the room, how do you guys feel about duplexes? In general, so I know there are a few in town,
Mhm.
some of them there's one that looks just like a raised ranch, it's off, Dug Hill Road, or over there somewhere. And then there's some that are higher that are duplexes, so. I mean, that's easy enough to put on a 2.5 acre lot, cause it's very minimal impact, so. Is there like opposition to that, should it be allowed? Just like a single family, if the size is similar, I mean. A 2-bedroom duplex is no different than a 4-bedroom home.
Right.
Correct? John, yes?
Well, I would agree with you, but I'm waiting to hear from others too.
Well,
Yeah.
and part of the presentation that we're doing in October, we are going to show pictures, including a duplex.
Right.
And we're gonna have people say, do you think this fits in the Woodstock community? And would you live in one?
Mhm.
As 2 different questions. So
Here's-
we have all different types of,
Here's one better,
But-
planning and zoning just approved a mixed use that has. An apartment and a studio and a business,
Right,
right? And that
right.
went through, and that's in an existing building that everybody
Mhm.
sees right on the corner, so. Like, you're looking at that building and you say, wow, I can put office space. I think it was like a 2-bedroom apartment and a studio in that building, it gives you perspective on what you can do if the town allows it
Allows
to
it.
be done.
Yeah, that particular building is, I wouldn't even know anything, well, I mean, they had all the interesting stuff before, but. That works for that particular building, that works well for that particular thing.
How many buildings in town are similar shape
I
and
don't
size
know.
to that
That-
building?
I-
A lot.
Yeah,
no, I
Yeah.
would be in duplexes.
So
I
there-
would be opposed. Depending on the density of it,
Well, you're
depending
still
on
gonna
how-
be limited to 2.5, for most, I think, for
Right.
most of the town, you're gonna be limited to 2.5 acres.
It has to be on at least
Right,
2.5.
right now it does.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So let me, so I'm gonna put up on the screen, this is from the town's affordable housing plan. And it just shows that there's a sort of an exhaustive list of all of the multifamily units, excuse me, in town. And one of them, which is interesting, it sort of fits in what Amy was just describing. So this is on Woodstock Road.
It burned down.
Well, it burned down. But so, you know, it's just a big old farmhouse that had 4 apartment units in it, you know, and so it's essentially taking that excess square footage and making it, you know, more productive. Instead of, you know, a 1 family 4 bedroom, you have, you know, two bedrooms, two bedroom units, or in this case, that's probably, you know, 1s and 2s before it burned down.
Just to comment on that specific property, because I rented that front bottom apartment once. I never moved in, but we did rent it. That was a storefront there. You won't,
Mhm.
you walked in that front door, to the left would have been the store area. There would have been another door in front of you to get to the apartment side. And then when we had it, there was 4 apartments there altogether.
Mhm.
But that particular building had structural issues, because it
Sure.
had a big sag in the middle. I think there was space they might have used for storage underneath when it was a store also. Because the back of it is like, it's 2 stories in the front, but it was like 3 stories in the back. It was like an
So-
extra basement space.
Oh, okay, yeah, so it walked out, yeah, it sloped down. So, but I think the broader idea, obviously, there's certainly specific issues with any given property, but the property at the corner of 171 and 169 is another decent example. Is you've got these larger historic buildings with excess square footage. And that, I mean, that might be, you know, even allowing that could be a, you know, 2 birds 1 stone situation. Is making it easier to retrofit those would not only increase your housing stock, but it would also promote the preservation of historic structures.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
I can think of several farmhouses that
Oh, yeah.
are like
Sure.
80% empty, whereas if they could invest in it, like a family, keep the people living in it, make some money, like,
Well, you and I had talked about the house at the Orchard.
yeah,
The orchard, which orchard?
in front of Woodstock Orchards, that house they wanted to tear down, that's
It's
just
empty.
storage, it's empty.
Oh, yeah, the one you drive around to get to the, oh,
Drive
yeah.
around, yeah, I mean, that could be it could be apartments, it could be, you know, rented office space, it could be a lot of things, and there's a lot of spaces in town, I think that's, when we talk about housing and allowing stuff. You've got to remember, allowing it means rehabbing and doing these things too, not just new buildings.
Right.
Yeah.
And
there's
that,
a lot of buildings in town that could be rehabbed for a different purpose.
I mean, I can think of, if you go down Peak Brook Road by Hometown Bank going towards Jeffco, there's like a big house right after Fosca, maybe 2 houses after, there's a bigger house. When I was a kid, I think there were like 6 apartments in there, and then somebody bought it, turned it back to a single family, and now it's just sitting there empty. So there's like, you know, 4, 5, 6 apartments. And I think that happens a lot. It maybe there's an approach to addressing, you know, the use of existing buildings and encouraging this type of,
Right.
Could you imagine the historic district people, if someone wanted to divide up one of the houses in the historic district into apartments?
they can't control what happens inside of it.
I know, but I could.
No,
just
but I
see-
mean, as long as the exterior of the building is preserved, like, wouldn't that be a win? I would think.
That's why the Rusty Relic was like that. Academy owned it and had.
Right. Well, they had students living in there.
I have a question that makes me think of this. Why is it okay for student housing, but not okay for like other group housing? Why can't we do room rentals of capable adults over the age of whatever? What's the difference if there's, you know, 10 high school kids sleeping in a 5-bedroom house, or 5 adults sleeping in a 5-bedroom house? Like, what is
Yeah.
the rub there with that allowing or not allowing?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. That may be a question for your fellow planning and zoning commissioners in about 45 minutes. I mean, I think maybe technically the difference is there's a supervisor on site for student housing, and so that
But
sort
they're,
of,
if you're all adults and you sign an
Right.
agreement, what is the,
yeah, right, in terms of, I'm just thinking in terms of, I don't know, loud music or neighborhood disruptions or something like that. There's, in theory, an adult on site taking care of the kids, but yeah, if you're all adults, yeah, then, yeah, somehow that's worse, I guess.
yeah, well. I can see that, so. Sorry, fair. So, like, what's the difference between when you do, duplex, which we all just agreed on, and three, but we just talked about how you can put 3 or 4 into random houses anyways. Where is the line, like, that it changes?
The line is with the sewer capacity.
Yeah, I was gonna say that
One can accept.
the
But if
number
the
of
house is
people is
already,
definitely
like-
part of the equation.
But if you're just repurposing a house that already had, a
So
giant
it goes by
farmhouse that
bedroom,
already
right?
had like 5 bedrooms. Then
Sewer
it
capacity goes by
should
bedroom.
Have
Yep.
the sewer capacity to handle those 5,
Which you,
like people
I
that
don't
would
understand why it
occupy
goes by
those.
bathroom and bedroom, but.
But it doesn't. So, and you think about, right, big farmhouse, 5-bedroom, turn it into an apartment, you're gonna lose a bedroom for another kitchen. So you're actually reducing bedroom size in a lot of cases because you're making a common room or a kitchen.
But kitchens have different types of waste going into the septic system. Fats, oils and greases often get in there, and you also have, like it can impact how much that septic system can absorb. It's,
Right.
it's usually done by bedroom, not kitchens, but yeah, I think, it should change the formula, but I'm not sure.
Well, but if you can put an EDU on your property.
Right.
ADU, help me,
Accessory
Accessory
dwelling
dwelling
unit.
Yeah.
That's what I live in. When
Okay.
you drive by, I live in an
okay,
EDU.
Right.
I have a kitchen.
So what's the difference there? You know what I mean? Like, I think we just then objectively need to step away from where our knee-jerk reactions and be objective about what we're feeling. with.
I like the idea of using existing facilities, I think, and even if it's more people, as long as it's not overburdening I'm okay with that sort of, what I don't want to see is a whole bunch of unique housing structures coming up on 169 or 171, going, oh, wow, look at all these, multiple houses, but if we can better use the existing facilities that already fit our look and feel, I think that's a good use. That's a good way forward.
The problem is right now, in order to do that, we have to change the zoning because it's not allowed right
Right.
now. So I just think you all have to understand.
But this is the place to start that discussion. If this planning and, well, ultimately we have to get it past the full planning and zoning commission because they're the ones that have to adopt this. But
Yeah.
Ideally speaking, this plan establishes a policy and a recommendation that hopefully and in theory, planning and zoning would pick up and change the regulations to meet it. So if we basically adopt a flow of housing policy where we want to provide opportunities for people in all sections of their life cycle and frankly all stops along the economic income spectrum, right? Then you need to loosen the zoning regulations to allow a variety of things, including retrofits of existing historic homes, with the assumption that you are retaining the historic character of the property. And maybe if you're adding a bunch more entrances and stuff like that, that maybe it's around the sides or the back so that you're preserving the historic facade, but then also converting your ADU allowance to a duplex or a triplex allowance as of right without having to go pull through any special permitting, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, this is the room where we start to make that policy.
So I think that in terms of if we were to make a flow of housing policy, I feel like the conversion of, older or available pre-existing dwellings, right, for different purposes. In my mind, like probably the folks that would gravitate towards those would be a younger set that probably don't have families yet. right? And then if you
Right.
did some, you know, senior housing type thing, right, that would address the sort of over a certain age group. I feel like the one area we're still missing, and needs more thinking around is, you know, like, I'm no longer in my twenties living by myself in a one bedroom apartment. I am married, maybe I have a small child or two, and I need something
That's
that.
all of Woodstock housing right now, though. I mean, granted, it's bigger and more
Yes and no.
expensive, but that
I was gonna,
is
but I think,
single family, like.
sure, but single family that is more affordable for younger people, because I think there are a lot of people right now that can't afford
So
the single family houses that currently exist.
the problem with
Right.
that is, it's based on developers and money. That's
Yeah, and
nothing
I
to do with
and
us. But
sure,
when you're talking about the flow of housing, if you think about it, they're like in the 70s and the 80s, all these raised ranches, and there's a shit ton of them in town, right?
Right.
And that's what you're talking about, that smaller house, like, you know what I
Right.
mean? But how do we balance the flow of like the people who are in those that have been in them for 30, like, you know what I mean? Like, because that will become available. There will be like all of those houses available when these people
right.
are no, you know what I mean?
But I guess, like, you know, we also talked about how right now there's a requirement that it's, you know, a new house has to be on 2.5 acres.
Which is.
Is that appropriate, or is?
I think that was based on, a 4-bedroom house to make sure if the house, even if it was a small house. If I'll tell people, I live in a ranch.
Mhm.
That was the original house.
Mhm.
And then they like exaggerated it a little bit, so they put in a streetcar garage and then, oh, there's a gap between the house, they connected them and put living space on top of the garage, and I have a 5-bedroom house now, and, it's, how do you not make sure there's land for that? I mean, could they deny somebody the ability to grow their house if their septic system is smaller?
Yeah, you could,
Yes.
sure.
So you gotta understand too, there's the option of like cluster developments, which address all of those things. That's as, you know, you have this parcel, we cluster the housing into smaller lots here, we use, you know, the back space over there that you can't build on, that's where all the water and the, you know what I mean? And I think that's more desirable for those smaller houses, right? Like it makes.
Well, and I think having something like that has two advantages, right? It is available for those folks that, you know, that want to move out of an apartment but can't afford the big house, right? But I think it's also attractive for those folks, like you were talking about, that kind of want to you know, like their kids have moved out, they're in a giant house, but it's just, you know, yourself and your spouse,
But
and you want to downsize, but you're not ready to go into like, you know, an assisted living facility, or you don't want to live in one of those
Right.
sort
I
of.
think what people don't understand though, is again, it goes back to money and the developer. So if we allow that type of cluster thing on a subdivision where they can put multiple houses on smaller lots. And you know, you mandate like how many you can put and how much land or
Right.
whatever, but those smaller houses on smaller lots. Maybe they can get more houses than they could have with the larger ones, so they
Right.
make enough, so that it's profitable for them to develop and it's still safe for the ecosystem and it's still controlled and maintained.
Right, but I think that those are the types of things that need to be explored, and those are the types of things that need to be like considered. Right, because you can't have a full like flow of housing if you're not addressing all the different.
Right.
Well,
Steps.
Here's something I wanna throw out. I was talking to my brother-in-law, who's in real estate in Virginia a couple of years ago. This demand might go down from the baby boomers, cause there's eventually gonna be less of them. But the demand's never gonna go down
Yeah.
because the younger generation is shut out of the market now. So there's always gonna be that demand, so prices are always gonna stay up.
Yeah, and we tend to, we're strongly trending towards smaller household sizes, you know, fewer kids per family.
Right.
And so, you know, so it's, you need, more housing units to serve the same amount of population, in other words. You know,
But
because
it's
we used to have,
also
yeah,
not moving in a favorable direction. It's not going to.
yeah. And on the other hand, yeah, well, that's, actually, Bill, I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about that, because, you know, my broad thinking of, and it maybe Kate, what you're talking about is in the flow of housing, you can, you know, you're focusing on certain things leaves gaps in other ways. You know, some of my thinking had been like, if we are focusing on making it easier to build like senior downsize housing, like apartments or little bungalows or whatever, you know, like higher density, lower footprint type things, what that would do in theory was, you know, encourage seniors and downsizers to, you know, leave their existing larger houses to move into these smaller things. And then all of a sudden there's a bunch of these larger houses that are for sale that could be, you know, for people moving up. But it sounds like, Bill, your brother-in-law might disagree with that theory a little bit, that by serving seniors over here, you're actually serving others, you know, with the housing that seniors are abandoning.
I'm just saying there's never gonna be like a vacuum of demand. Just because there's gonna be less baby boomers doesn't mean there's gonna be more housing available. People in their twenties that would like to be in houses are shut out now because it's way too expensive. So even if housing becomes available,
They can't
Uh,
buy it.
they can't buy it, or if they can buy it, they're still gonna be filling that vacuum. There's a vacuum that's created economically.
Right.
That's people are being shut out, but they're about to get to the point where they will be able to do something. So you could create surplus now, but it's not necessarily gonna be
Mhm.
as helpful as you might think.
Yeah, I can't totally disagree with that. Yeah.
You've got so again, this housing thing that we talked about, Woodstock isn't unique in the trend of larger lots that's trying to stop development that happened like 20 something years ago. A lot of towns kind of said, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But after 20 years of not allowing all of these types of housings, you've created this enormous amount of one type of housing, and that's what the housing market needs to correct. And the only way it's gonna get corrected is if zoning allows the building of those
Love it.
homes that were shut out 20 years ago for whatever reason. And a lot of municipalities and planners are coming back around and realizing that it was a mistake because now we've created this issue. And it's gonna take a long time to balance it out, but if we don't make changes, then it won't change back into a variety, like you know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like something has to give somewhere, and it's a bigger problem than just Woodstock. It's when you look at that, like, you had a whole variety of houses built for 40 years, and you said, nope, only these for 20. What happens, you know, to the natural flow of housing? It's gone.
There are no starter homes. That's what's missing.
Mm-mm.
I mean, my first home was a 2-bedroom cape.
And when they are, they're gone in a day.
Yeah.
Like one just went up on the lake,
Mhm.
cutest little 1-bedroom, 1-bath house. It's in the 300s. It'll be gone tomorrow.
I'll be at a premium too.
Well, I was gonna say, and,
Over the price, yeah.
right,
Yep.
So when we bought our first house back at the end of '85, we sold it 2 years later in '88 for about double the price.
Mhm.
So we had that big jump back then, and hasn't looked back since then, basically.
That's I mean, that's the traditional housing ladder. But the problem is the whole system has moved up the ladder and left, you know, the first couple of rungs,
Yeah.
you know, unavailable, you know, so you can still climb that, you can still climb the housing ladder, but you have the cost for entry onto rung number one is much higher than it was.
Well, the larger lot sizes make sense in the drinking water watersheds, but I know it's something this town would never agree to, is to have real zoning where the Mashmucket Brook watershed or the Quittapahk River watershed up in the northeastern corner that aren't drinking water watersheds could potentially have smaller lots and you know, more dense housing. But I don't think that would be well received. It'd be, interesting to see what planning and zoning does to look at it. But in a drinking water watershed, one of the things that it does say is 2 acre lots is a good thing because of the, we can't put sewers in, except where they already exist, and so you have to have the ability to treat waste on site. So that's justification for it. It's in the drinking water watershed manual, or so there's some guidebook I got. I actually have a paper copy of it. It's only online now. Recommending larger lots in a drinking water watershed. But not everything in town is a drinking water watershed.
And that's something that could be addressed, right? Can we zone, can we do like watershed zone and say that lot size is different than, is that a possibility?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, there's also.
Yeah.
distinction
Although,
between-
I mean, geographically, I mean, Gene, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, we're probably talking 90+% of the town is either in Putnam or Willimantic watershed, right?
Well, 3/4. There's this, I'm gonna show you the map. This is Southbridge, and then there's a V that goes around the Southbridge watershed.
Right.
Then the southwestern part of town drains towards the Natchog, and then there's a little mound in the sorry, at the end of the street, Mashbucket Brook watershed starts, and that's not.
Oh, like Quarry Road and down there.
I just think it's important because that's a realistic way to say density in the watershed should not be improved, but these particular areas are not in the watershed. It may be the lot size could be,
Smaller.
1.5 instead of 2, like just, and that gives more of an opportunity.
But we also have two different distinctions there. We have the watershed, which is very extensive, but we also have what are designated actual aquifers. It's like especially the.
Oh, well, yeah, no, the height, right. So there's aquifer protection areas versus public drinking supply watersheds. Gene, sort of a follow-on question of that is sort of looking at big houses and many bedrooms and stuff like that. Whereas the watershed guide might say, okay, 2 acre zoning, but we have no limits, nor does public health, I think, on, number of bedrooms in a single family house. So if you wanted to build, the breakers or, a massive house, you could have a 10-bedroom house on 2.5 acres, right? I mean,
Yeah,
so what's the
think
difference
we all
between,
understand
a 10-bedroom house on 2.5 acres and, 8 1-bedroom apartments on 2 acres, from a wastewater standpoint.
Well, I would have to get the size of the septic tank and leaching fields is gonna vary by the number of bedrooms, so if you
Yeah.
had a 10-bedroom house, they'd have to have a
Yeah,
ginormous.
you'd have a big septic system,
mean,
but if that's, it seems like, there are ways to meet the intent of watershed protection while still creating some flexibility for development.
But you see, like you had an exit house that's just being updated now that had, that possibility, but they were operating on cisterns. So they have an old septic system that's not
Yeah.
brought up to current code. So now they're gonna have to do extensive work.
Sure.
Oh, they caught that.
What other questions do you have for the group before we have to?
No,
Please.
this is, and I don't have that many other questions. I think there's a lot of value in just talking things through, like, and so I'm, I have full page of notes here that I'm taking, that this is all going to be fodder for the housing discussion. And yeah, I look forward to seeing, to hearing, or if I'm able to attend the community conversation on the 22nd, and some of the, if there are going to be written recommendations coming out of that, that's going to be very, very useful for our purposes next time. Yeah. So I would say, so looking at, so the next meeting, you'll have sort of background stuff, which is, again, demographics, a little bit of history of Woodstock. There's not going to be a lot controversial necessarily. So do we want to pick another topic and just kind of have this kind of conversation for next time? So Amy, I leave it to you to pick your favorite next topic.
Well, we said that we were gonna have the discussions on housing and, I believe economic development was
Okay.
one. And what was there another one that we
Three,
said
was
was key? Hmm?
Thought there were three.
Um.
Yeah, why don't we talk about economic development, you know, and business
Okay,
use and growth in town next time.
Perfect. So you will send out your draft of the next section, so Marcia, what he did before the meeting, we'll have that to review. The next meeting will be on, I was looking for November 6th.
Yeah, so we'll get you something to look at, and again, it'll probably be about the same length. It'll be 8-10 pages, and we'll go from there.
And then, the next discussion is economic development. Wendy, can you share the dates for your community stuff with the group,
Yep.
please?
So housing will be on October 22nd at 10 AM and 7 PM.
Oh,
So you don't need to come to both.
nice.
Although snacks are good, you might want. October 22nd, at 10 AM and 7 PM. The following Wednesday on October 29th, at the same times, will be transportation and outdoor spaces. And the following Wednesday, which I believe is November 5th, is social environment, which covers communications, civil engagement, personal, social engagement. Primarily, it's lack of communication or a good communication strategy, or one place where people can go to figure out what's going on.
Been trying to fight that fight for years, I still haven't got
And they're
it.
here, well, the 22nd, they're in this room, the 29th and the 5th, they're in room B.
Perfect.
Cool. That'll be
And
great.
I think we're good. I think we have everything documented. I think the conversation was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your input. I appreciate it. It's a good conversation.
We could discuss the details for hours, but
Yeah.
Yeah, but we
can't. so-
Yeah, we can't. Awesome.
Thank you, John.
All right, I will take a motion to adjourn to make
I
this
will make a motion.
official.
to adjourn.
I'll second.
Yay, I don't have to change it from last week and we're done. I love it when I